Okay, hi, everybody. I'm going to do the adequate notice first, and then we'll kind of get the meeting going. So adequate notice of the meeting to be held by the Township of Ocean Board of Education on Tuesday, March 29, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. has been provided in accordance with the requirements of Chapter 231 Public Laws 1975. Number one, notice of the meeting was posted on the bulletin board in the lobby of the Administration Building, 163 Monmouth Road, Oakhurst, New Jersey. All township school district schools and transportation and the school district website on March 23, 2022. Number two, notice of the meeting was transmitted to the Asbury Park Press and the New Coastal newspaper on March 23, 2022. And number three, notice of the meeting was filed with the municipal clerk, Township of Ocean, on March 23, 2022. Can I have a roll call, Ms. Truba?
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Ms. Beal.
Here.
Ms. Gilman. Here. Ms. Hayes.
Here.
Mr. McCarthy.
Here.
Ms. McGovern.
Here.
Ms. Prolamis.
Here.
Ms. Telerico.
Here.
Ms. Tortorella. Mr. Weinstein.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, great. Why don't we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, welcome, everybody. And today is, I guess, a kind of a special meeting that we had specifically to just go over our budget for today. So that's why the agenda is pretty slim and only focused on that. So tonight's discussion is about the preliminary budget that we are submitting to the county for review. So there's still work to be done, and there's things that still are in some calculations that need to be worked out, but we're going to talk through the preliminary budget and kind of go through that. And I think Ms. Truba and Dr. Svenkovitz are going to go through that and walk us through that. So so let me now turn it over to Jim.
Okay. Well, I don't have a report outside of the budget, so we're not going to do that.
Okay.
Tina, you have a report outside of the budget?
I do. I want to
Okay,
tell
just
the
one thing.
board that on April 12th, Richard Grip, who is statistical forecasting, they finished the demographic study for 2022, and he's going to come in during the work session for 15 to 20 minutes to explain to the board the analysis. So I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that.
Great, thanks for that heads up.
Okay.
Super, super. So now let's go to public comment. Let me read the public comment side. All motions are posted on the district website. At this point in the meeting, we will now conduct the first of two public comment sessions. The first session will be open for the public comments on agenda items only. The second session will be at the end of the meeting and can be on any topic. Would anybody from the public like to make a comment this time? Anybody sitting in the audience would like to make a comment? No? Okay. Ms. Conway, anybody on remotely would like to make a comment?
No, President Weinstein, there are no commenters.
Okay, great. So now let's move to financial management and resource services. And Ms. McGovern, would you mind taking that section?
Sure. 6.1, move to accept discretionary school security grant funding in the amount of $189,594 to provide network security system improvements. Local funds are available for the excess cost of the equipment and other facility project. 6.2, move to approve the following 2022-2023 tentative school district budget for submission to the county superintendent for review. The superintendent recommends approval to adopt the tentative budget for fiscal year 2022 to 2023. Be it resolved that the tentative budget be approved for the 2022-2023 school year using the 22-23 state aid figures, and the school business administrator, board secretary be authorized to submit the following tentative budget to the executive county superintendent of schools for private approval in accordance with the statutory deadline. The 22-23 total expenditures equal $88,937,019, less the anticipated revenues, which is $17,888,202. Taxes to be raised will be $71,048,817. And to advertise said tentative budget in the newspaper of record and on the district website in accordance with the form required by State Department of Education and according to law, and be it further resolved that a public hearing be held at the Township of Ocean Board of Education located at 163 Monmouth Road, Oakhurst, New Jersey, 07755, on April 26, 2022 at 7 PM for the purpose of conducting a public hearing on the budget for the 2022-2023 school year as listed below. 6.3, we're going to discuss continuing the budget discussions for the 2022-2023 budget. So I know we're going to go into deep discussion, but can I have a second on 6.1 and 6.2?
Second.
Okay, so Ms. Truba, I will turn it over to you.
Okay, so we want to have the discussion around the budget. So Jim, do you want to?
Sure. So do you want to start with the, I think we could start with that presentation.
Yeah.
Mary Ann, can you put that up,
Yeah, bring the
please?
presentation up there.
By the way, thanks, Amy, that was pretty good.
That was my flight attendant fast voice.
Great. Who did this?
All right, so I think, Tina, you want to go over the revenue piece? and
Yeah,
all
I
that,
mean,
and-
this really has not changed much from what we've done in the past. We've reviewed all of this and went through it. The one thing we are taking a withdrawal out of capital reserve of 1450. And it's for one section of the roof in Wayside that does tend to leak a lot. And then we're paying for some of the HVAC in the curtain wall with that. We did the same thing with our maintenance reserve. We're taking out about $138,000 for different maintenance projects, so that we didn't burden the taxpayer with those types of projects. But this chart has not changed from the last time that we presented it.
I think the one thing, if I can add, so as you can see from the first line, we were able to, and a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about the possibility of using actually almost all of our bank cap, up to $366,000. We were able to get the budget down to only having to use the bank cap, which will come off this year if we don't use it, which was about just over $20,000. And the impact to the tax levy beyond the 2% was minimal, about 0.03%, if I'm not mistaken. So it was a very minimal impact, and as such, it really didn't make sense not to use it, right? Since it was coming off and we were not going to be able to utilize those funds beyond this year. And it does help us for future years to have the rest of that bank cap still available if needed moving forward.
Next slide. So this is an important chart because it's basically showing you that the tax levy is making up 85% of the revenue that comes into that district. And as we go out and continue to lose more of the state aid for the next 3 years, based on the fact that we're an S2 district, that percentage does have to go higher. So the next chart is showing in the next 3 years, due to being an S2 district, we're looking to lose another, $850,000. So from 2017, we lost $2.5 million in state aid. Next chart. So Jim, if you want to talk to this.
Yeah, so if you recall, a few weeks back, we were speaking to the fact that we were about 1.8 million over the 2% of what we were allowed to go over the 2%, for the tax levy. And, what were some of the things that we did to close that gap? So one of the big things that Tina spoke of was moving some funds out of the general budget and using more of our capital reserve for the HVAC project, coming out of the ESSER grant, putting that into the capital reserve. Not all of it, but a portion of it, and then also the roof project that Tina just spoke about over at Wayside. So that was 1.45 million. We did reallocate about $700,000, a little more. That was in the general budget over to ESSER. We looked for those things that were not recurring costs. And we'll go over what some of those are in a little bit. But we were able to move things into the ESSER funds and out of the general operating budget. And, a little bit of a shell game there because it's moving money around, but obviously coming out of the general budget is ultimately what impacts the tax levy. We did go back and also looked at those supply areas that were either flat or had increased, and we looked at, where did an increase really need to exist based on the current usage in this year's budget? And we were able to garner about 150,000 there. And then, the wonderful all other actions, a little bit here, a little bit there, a little tweak here, a little tweak there, got us to where we needed to be. So those were the main areas that we were able to close the gap out of the general
So we were
fund.
1.8, but we found also that there was additional costs that we wanted to put into the budget, which was the $450,000 for some of the, that was for the roof. And then some of the other 250,000 was when we were looking over personnel, some people that we had in ESSER 2 needed to come back into the general operating budget. So we went from 1.8 to needing to close to like 2.5 again. And then that's how we did it using the capital reserve, the ESSERs. We looked at equipment and supplies and the other actions that, Jim and the administration worked long and hard to get the dollars.
And as we've said all along, obviously, these are things that we felt we needed to do for this year to get us where we need to be. With the continued reduction in state aid, it does not minimize the challenges moving forward as we go to next year and the year after. And so, we're not going to be in a place where, or I should say, we're going to be in a place where we're going to have to continue to be in a maintenance and minimize cuts mode over the next couple of years, to be within the 2%. So just keep that in mind as we keep moving down the line. And we really looked for things that we're not kicking the can. We know that the upcoming years are going to be challenging in and of itself, and we didn't want to take things and put more things into grant money that ultimately would have to come back into the general budget. There's some of that. It was difficult to avoid it, but eventually some of those things are going to come back into the general budget. And so we wanted to minimize how much that would be, so we wouldn't be in a worse position a few years down the line.
Okay, next chart, Marianne. Go to the next one after this. One more, yep. So this is basically showing you salaries and wages, and when you're looking at that, more than 80% of the budget is basically salary, wages, and benefits. The other line items, are where we really looked to fund operationally what we needed to. If you look, the general supplies and the textbooks are down. We moved as much as we could into the ESSER 3 grant. And that's why you're seeing some of that there. But the important thing to note is the last two lines are basically our out of district placements. And you can see how much those are going up year over year. So, the administration is looking at the enrollment in the charter schools, trying to understand that. But we are seeing more IEPs in the district, and some of those students cannot be educated as well here. We have to look for outside placement.
Right.
Okay, so the next chart is just putting that in a pie chart, and you can see what's going on with the salaries and wages. And then the next chart is the capital that we had a lot of conversations on. So I just wanted to recap the big projects that we have in next year's capital and lease upgrades. So it's the HVAC, the curtain wall, sidewalk and curb replacements, lease purchase of 5 54 passenger buses, and then we're continuing to invest in our technology. We do have a big switch replacement that we're also putting into our ESSER 3 for the intermediate school, and that'll be the last switch replacement that needs to be done, with the exception of the administration building that we're going to try to put in 23-24. Okay, next slide. Jim, you want to take this one?
Yeah, so in terms of, personnel, it's really minimal in terms of what's being added. When we looked at, a few weeks ago, when we looked at the asks, pretty much all of those asks are out of the budget. This is really what's remained. So in the general fund, we have the 3 in-class resources, and those are part-time positions that are required for the preschool. However, they can't be funded by preschool because they're in-class resource teachers, and they work with, the special, in the integrated preschool, the special education students. We did add, and Tina, and we worked on this, to 2 full-time bus driver positions to make really contracted to help us with our bus driver situation as we move forward. So we did, add a couple of bus driver positions, contracted bus driver positions in the budget. And then with the preschool grant, not in the general budget, but just adds as a result that will be funded through preschool grant, are 3 preschool teachers for the new sections and 3 preschool aides that will be, for the new sections. And then there was an ask for a preschool disability teacher that's in the special ed area, so cannot be funded through the preschool grant. And that is an ask that is going to be filled, but we believe that's going to be able to be filled as a result of reduction in other areas. So those are the new positions that are coming on, and some of which will be in the general fund in the preschool. Those covered by the preschool grant will not have to be in the general budget, but we wanted to show that they are new positions that are being added.
Next slide.
Next slide. All right, so these are some of the things in terms of personnel that, aside from the asks that are not being filled, that we're looking to do. Some of which we've already spoken about, and others we haven't quite spoken about yet. So we talked about the 3 elementary. Well, we say teachers, but it's really 3 elementary sections. The teachers in this instance, one is a retirement, so will not need to be refilled, and the others will, we believe will have homes for and other parts of the district. So those sections are coming out of Dow Avenue. The kindergarten aides we talked about across all the schools, really shifting. That shift is more to preschool for the aides. Special education teacher at the elementary level is through retirement that'll be repurposed. I think that's that area that was repurposed to the preschool disability. Elementary Italian. We have not been able to fill that position. We've gone all of this school year without it, and some of last year without it. So we've basically decided that we are not going to fill that position. So moving forward, at least into next year, we'll be offering Spanish at the elementary level. And that will be the world language option for the students at the elementary level. I believe we've talked about special social studies teacher, at the middle school due to retirement, 5th grade teacher at the middle school due to retirement. The BCA position we talked about was one that we haven't been able to fill. So we've just taken it out of the budget. Same thing with part-time bilingual instructional assistant, have not been able to fill that position. So taking it out of the budget. We do have a retirement, we have an open position. We had a transfer within the secretarial unit. And so we're going to be replacing that from within. Well, we're going to transfer some people around. In other words, we're not hiring someone to replace it. So we'll move people internally to replace that. We had a retirement of an interventionist that we will fill from within. Retirement of a physical education, or not a retirement, a resignation due to not returning from a leave, that from physical education teacher at Wayside, that'll be filled from within the district. Special ed math and special ed social studies at the high school, one being a resignation, one being a retirement, will be filled from within. And then in French, we were down, and we've discussed this at the board level. We have French has been slowly getting to a point where it's been being phased out, where the current French students in 8th grade moving beyond, we're going to be able, no new students were going to be taking French. And when we looked at the numbers, which are probably down below 35 for next year total at the high school, we felt that it made more sense to move those 35 students to an online program in French, and unfortunately, sort of expedite the phasing out of the French program at the high school level. So that teacher will be reassigned, but that as I said, the phasing out of that has been sort of expedited up. And so those are, along with the asks that were in the budget that came out, the personnel moves that as of right now, are in this, are reduced as a result, or, how we've shown them here as a result of within the tentative budget. Next slide. So what are the impacts of that, right? So obviously in those areas where we've reduced some sections, we're going to be seeing some higher class sizes than what are there now. When we look at, I know we obviously, our class sizes at the elementary level are still very good and below what most of many other districts in the county certainly are. Some of those class sizes will go at Dow Avenue will go from 14 average, which is extremely low, to about 18, which is still very good and in line with the other elementary schools in the district. I mentioned some of the cuts in programs that we would have would be, the French program moving to online for those remaining students, and then the elementary Italian. We were very much hoping to be able to add a pre-K supervisor, which we will not be able to do. We talked about other supervisory ads in the areas of CTE, which we will not be able to do, unfortunately. There will be teacher movement within the district. Some people will move buildings. Some people will move in departments within schools. But we'll try to minimize that, but that will happen. We're unable to do the switch upgrade in the administration building, which will of course impact what we, it's just some of the wireless and some of the technology work we can do here. It's not, it needs to be done, but can we hold off on it for a little bit?
Yeah.
Yes. And, one of the other things is that we took out any upgrades to the pre-K playgrounds for next year, which would need, we just wouldn't have able to fund that. The pre-K do have playgrounds. It's not that they don't, but we were hoping to upgrade, some of those things, and that'll have to be put off at least for this year. So those are some of the things. I certainly don't want to say there's going to be higher class sizes across the board. I think in most areas we won't see higher class sizes, but in these areas where obviously some things had to be reduced or repurposed, we will certainly see some higher class sizes in these areas. Okay. Next slide, Mary. Right, so what are the next steps? So obviously this is the tentative budget, as Mr. Weinstein said, as we've all said, right now there's still some outstanding questions out there. We're still waiting on some transportation costs and some of our contracted transportation routes, which could add to the general budget, which might require, if that were to happen, we'd have to go back and reevaluate some other parts to the budget that might result in some additional reductions. And that's the next thing, meeting with MOESC on transportation expenses. We'll, over the next several weeks, we'll be finalizing any transfers and movement that are going to happen within personnel. Tina just mentioned the review of the demographic study, which will be coming up, and the newest one, which will be coming up in a couple of weeks. And we've already discussed that we are doing efficiency studies in transportation to take a look at, how we may be able to do things potentially more efficiently within transportation to save some funds. The other thing, of course, is what will be the result, and this isn't going to be before the end of, before our final budget hearing, but, our strategic plan and, what's going to come out of that will lead to, any future studies that may need to be done. We've talked about, there's been a lot of discussion about, this property and, those kinds of things. So what's the long-term use of this property? And, the board is going to have to make some decisions moving forward about what it wants to do as it relates to that and some other things in the district that may ultimately result in some cost savings for us down the line. Things like, looking at the structure of our elementaries, the idea of, examining the possibility of moving to more of a grade level structure than a community structure. Can that create more efficiencies for us? Once again, something that I think needs to be looked at as we move forward. That doesn't mean we do it if it doesn't make sense, but it is something that I think needs to be examined.
Before next year's budget,
Mhm.
before we're here.
What do you mean?
I feel like if that's something to be looked at, then it needs to be looked at
You don't mean
before
that-
January. Like it has to be looked at before we're sitting here, because if that's something that you would think about doing, you need the
You mean with
numbers.
this property, you mean with the property you're talking about?
No, I'm talking
Oh.
about with the grade levels, like if that's something we're gonna look at.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that that would be something we would be able to, that would have to be a plan that would happen over
Oh,
the
yeah,
next
no, I
several
understand,
years.
right, but I
Like,
just need
I'm
the
not saying that
numbers.
would happen next year, but yes, I mean, I think
I just
next
think the
year
numbers, like the
is where that would
starting.
have to be. And I think we'd have to, look at our demographic, look where the population is, look at transportation. Because obviously, if you do that, it impacts transportation. So in some cases, you may save money, but in other cases, you may incur more costs. So it could be a wash. So if it's a wash, why are you doing
Let's
it?
stay with this budget right now.
Yeah.
So,
Next slide.
is that your last budget?
I think so. Is there any other slide? I think that's it.
Okay.
Now, we have some of those other detailed things that we could
Well,
go
I'd
over.
like to talk about the tax levy. So,
Yeah.
because I know that's the next,
Okay.
people
You
want
wanna
to
continue
understand
then?
that.
Yeah, can we go to that?
Yeah, why don't we
Yep,
continue, yeah.
there you go.
All right, so the tax levy, I wanted everybody to understand the history of the district and what we've done over the past several years. So from a fiscal perspective, the district has been very conscientious not to go above the 2%. 1 year that was needed to happen was when we had to apply for the healthcare waiver because the healthcare costs went up so much. And that was in 18-19. Every other year, we tried to stay at 2% or less, okay? So when you go to the next page, Mayor, I just wanted to make sure everybody understood, the tax or the state imposes that you could go to 2% on a tax levy. Because we've always been giving back, because we're not taking the 2%, we have in the past 3 years saved $368,000 in banked cap. What that is I could take that amount without having to go to a vote because we've saved that in the past. Now, what we've chosen to do in this budget is I don't want to take everything this year. I wanted to use the 20,000 that was going to expire. So you have up to 3 years to utilize this money. And the state tells you what is going to expire in the year that you're currently budgeting for. So for us, that was like $20,000. So we did wind up putting that into the budget. But if we took the whole amount, it would have increased the tax rate to 2.54%. And we could have done that. So we really, like I said, I think this is, they've done a tremendous amount of work to keep this below 2%. And it does show the fiscal responsibility of the school district to the taxpayers. If you go to the next page, so the tax levy increase is the 1,377. That includes the expiring bank cap, and it's 2.03%. And what that means to the average homeowner, and the average assessment, I think, was $550,000. It was $11.26 a month for $135 a year on an average homeowner's house. Okay, so if you go to the next slide, what that's showing you is our revenue is going up by the 2.3 from a tax levy perspective, but we're able to increase our expenses by 3.06, and that's because we're using the bank cap, the capital reserve, and the maintenance reserve. Okay. Now, the other charts that are in the deck are the capital improvements. I wanted the board to understand what went into 22, 23 for capital. All right, so it's the blue column. We've talked about all those projects. The next slide. Marianne. It's curriculum and IT. There should be two other slides in there.
Yep.
Okay, so curriculum, these are the major curriculum programs that we are funding, either in our general fund or in the ESSER 3 grant that we have. And the final is the technology capital and equipment that we are funding in this budget. So we're getting the Chromebooks, we're replacing, we're getting laptops, we're doing printers, smart cameras, anything that the district has always done, because we continue to replace Chromebooks 2 to 3 grades every year. All of that has been put into this budget.
Right.
And that's
And
basically
the
it.
Chromebook one was a little bit tough because that is a recurring cost
Yes.
that we are going to put into the ESSER 3. So, we did that somewhat reluctantly because that is an expense that's going to have to come back in. The switches was a good one and that we could do. And that is not a recurring cost, or at least not a short-term recurring cost. But, Wonders was a similar thing, putting the Wonders renewal in there because it's a 3-year thing.
Yep.
But the Chromebooks, that's one that's going to have to go back in at some point. So. Okay. That's it.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Irene, did you have a question?
I did. I have 2 comments.
Well, first, thank you both for
Yes.
the work here and to the, all the people you're working with, the administration and the teachers and everybody. So just thanks for all the work that you did, and thank you too for all the work you did. So I really appreciate all the help here.
And I was going to preface my comments with that too. Getting it to 2.03 was amazing from our previous. I just have concerns about 2 things on the proposed curriculum budget. The Wonders renewal. I know that there have been some concerns about that program, which may not be conducive to all readers and has precipitated some extra help from the Wilson Reading Program. Our test scores last year, which I know can't be the be-all judge, but in every grade level, there were challenges in reading. So maybe just keeping an eye on the Wonders program and weighing it against what this year's assessment looks like, and then deciding how we go forward with it. The second is the Spanish textbooks. I know it's only $28,000, but we did have the association express the fact that the teachers don't really need those tools, that they have supplemental material, and perhaps we should give some credence to the people who are actually involved in using these
Was
things.
that for Spanish or math?
Math.
I think it was math.
They were
I
talking more about math.
think they were talking more about math.
No, I thought it was Spanish. I have a note in my,
When Mr. Riley spoke, you spoke about
you
math.
spoke about math.
Math, yeah.
Okay. My second comment is a public service announcement. So we watched St. Peter's do this amazing come from behind, and what an opportunity for that school. And that's going to equate to increased enrollment, increased revenue. There's no doubt about it. They're going to see an uptick. And then I thought about our own district and the opportunity that we have in getting more tuition paying students from outside of Ocean Township to take advantage of our award-winning athletic program, our award-winning Spartan schools, whether they're dancers or band members or the DECA team or the robotics team, the chorus members, the band members, the actors. We have so much to offer, yet our public relations, I know we have a part-time person, but we have PR only coming from within. We have our administrators, our principals, Dr. Stefankowitz, Kelly, always tweeting out great things that we're doing, but it's in-house. And unless people are following you on Twitter, only Ocean Township people know about it. So I would encourage our PR person to put ads in newspapers outside of Ocean Township, the link, the coaster, the Star Coaster down in the Manasquan area, more papers to advertise our Spartan schools and get that tuition number up and get our enrollment increased any way we have to. This is springtime. And pardon the illusion, but we need to make a full court press to get more students into our district. Thank you.
Okay, great. Anybody else have any questions? Things they want to say? I think, Alex, did you have your hand up first?
I do. I have several questions. I don't have my normal 20, but I do have about 5, I think. So you mentioned in not only this week, but last week, the impact to class size really is only going to impact one school. The way I see this budget, it's going to impact Dow from, like you said, an estimated 18 average class size to 14. 3 teachers leaving Dow to go to other schools, in my opinion, does not address, complement, or include parts of the strategic commitment that we made to Dow students. It's a struggling school. It has been struggling for many years. And you guys said, what can we do? What can we do? For like 4 years, I sat here. And then there was finally a plan to come up with something to do with Dow. And for the past 2 years, we have dedicated personnel, supports for teachers, and we have turned an academically struggling school into an improving school. And the fact that we are going to be transferring out 3 teachers, I think is, I can't search for the proper term, but I don't think it's in the best interest of the 400 students that go to Dow. So how does this reduction in class size, particularly at OTES, affect the strategic plan for that school?
Class size is just one of the things that we've looked at, obviously, in terms of the interventions we've provided over at OTES. And, I think, as I mentioned, I think last week or the week before, that, what's most important is the personnel that's there and the instructional approach that's there. Sure, does class size help? Sure. I mean, we wouldn't have done it if it didn't have some, form of impact. But what's most important is the instruction and the quality of instruction, which I think is top notch. And so I think that outweighs, an increase, a slight increase in class sizes. I know that in the county, the average class size of elementary schools is somewhere between 23 and 25 per class. That was based, that was about 2 years ago, based on a survey we did within the county. And so our class sizes are still very, I would tell you that if you told most teachers, asked most teachers around the county if they have 18 students in their class, they would take that in a heartbeat. So I still think the class sizes are low enough that the only reason why we're not thinking that they're not low is because they've been even lower. And we've had that luxury. Unfortunately, we just can't afford that luxury any longer. But the instructional approach and the commitment to instruction remains. So I'm not going to sit here and say that there won't necessarily be some impact, because we know that lower class sizes are helpful, but our class sizes remain very low compared to many of our counterparts within the county and state.
But prior to decreasing the class size, we had an average of 18 students at Dow, and our scores were abysmal at that school. So your argument of, well, if you ask other people in the county if they have 18, and that's great, I wonder what their scores.
Well, I think my argument is more that we've changed, not only have we changed the class size, we've really changed so much about
Sure.
the number of interventionists that are there, the number, the instructional approach, the coaching, all of that is far, I think, has far more impact than the class size. So we feel very confident that we're going to be able to continue to see the gains that we've seen at Dow Avenue, even with slightly increased class size from what it's been.
Okay, just one more question.
Sure, I can ask one more and then I'll come back. I think it was both of you that mentioned, we're going to still look in the meantime to continue on how we can reduce costs, between now and April. So if we're looking at, changing the block schedule possibly at the middle school, selling this building as another option.
That's not going to
I don't
happen.
think that's not for this.
That
was
that's not
brought up
for
at
this
one
budget,
point.
yes.
Okay, so selling this building, as you
No,
mentioned,
I think, no, I think the things. we're
looking
talking
into
about-
what to do to this building. Can I
I think
finish my
that's- but that's
strategic?
Yeah,
next
these
year.
aren't things that are
This
going to
is not for
happen
this
now.
budget,
I mean,
right.
these are-
But if we discuss it between now and what's the X date? If we discuss it between now and X, when does that affect the the budget? Like say in a pipe dream, say we decide to sell this building, or we decide to make an overhaul thing like, changing the start time. Like if we decide that in June, that won't affect for a solid year, correct? Like
Probably.
if we
At
decide
least,
that
yeah, at least.
4 weeks from now, won't affect next year, right? Still won't affect next year.
It probably does not, but I would not exclude it from,
Okay,
I would assume if, to your point, if we were to look at some of these options sooner than later is better, if that's more your
but
point.
there's no do we have in a perfect world, let's decide what to do on X, Y, and Z by this date?
I think if you're talking about things like for funds related to possibly this establishment or this thing,
Mhm.
I think that has to be a real, it depends, because we would go out to RFP, that would be a long process.
Yeah.
We'd also have to figure out things like where would we be and, in this administration building, so that would take some time. So I would think it's probably a fairly involved process.
At least a year, I would say.
Well, I know the
At least.
process is involved, but.
The
I don't know if
savings
Ms.
would
Tina-
be even longer than the process. The
Say again?
savings on it would take even longer than the process would take.
Yeah.
So I would, when
The
you, as you're
savings of what?
saying, this, you're not gonna see the savings for a while on this, but if we decided tomorrow we were gonna sell this building,
Mhm.
it's gonna take time to sell it. It's gonna take time to
Yeah.
find a place to go, to move the equipment, to upgrade whatever facility we're going to. And you're not gonna reap the savings on this building for, I would say, a year or
Probably
two from
probably,
when it's even sold, if it's sold, because I'm not saying.
No,
it won't
yeah,
sell,
I
But
know.
I'm saying, like,
I think more importantly, I think we probably need to address that, I don't want to say the elephant in the room, but this thing kind of comes up all the time. So we need to address this building, this
outside of the
facility,
budget, yeah.
right, outside of this budget to figure out what this board at least wants to do.
Sure,
sooner or
we've
later.
never had such a financial problem as we do this year.
I wouldn't say that.
We've had,
So
I've had 'em, yeah.
if it comes up every year, but this might be the most, urgent year to
Mm.
consider it. Okay, I'll wait to ask my other 2 questions.
John, did you have a question? Did you want to say something?
Ms. Truba, the $2.5 million loss that you stated since 2017, is that, I'm just asking this because I purely do not know, this is not a leading question. Does that include the projected losses that we have going into 2025, or that is from 2017 to today?
Going forward, it's going to show
It's
you.
a total.
It's a
the
total.
That
over-
is the
over that time.
amount of the S2.
That we are
Yes.
losing into 2025, $2.5 million.
So up to this point, it's about 1.7.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful.
And I think we were told that in 2018, is that right? Right, we were told that we were given the heads up on what was going to happen in 2018. I think.
With projections.
With the projections, right?
Okay. And then, so we only used $20,000 of the $386,000 bank cap. How much is left in our maintenance reserve?
The maintenance reserve had 1.25. So, there's over $1 million still left there. And our capital reserve had like 3.4, so we have $2 million left there
Okay.
after we take out for this year.
And I'm asking, like, on your expertise as a school business administrator, that is a good amount of money to have to keep us soluble for some sort of unprojected issue. I know that we don't have a crystal ball, but I'm asking more on your experience. Is that
A
enough?
lot of schools do not have maintenance reserves.
Okay.
So it's always good to have something, in case something breaks. I mean, that you're always able to pull out of your maintenance reserve. Your capital reserve, you're only allowed to pull it out during your budget time. So it has to be where the board is strategically thinking about what capital investment they want to make.
So you would say that we're definitely being fiscally responsible in the amount that we're
Absolutely.
leaving.
I mean, just what we put away, I mean, we have our 2%, more than our 2% in our fund balance. So, I mean, we are healthy, but going into next year, I'm not going to have that $3.6 million that we typically would be putting into revenue, because as we've released over the past 2 years, like $7.2 million of excess fund, it's eventually going to get smaller and smaller.
Okay, thank you.
So it's important for like looking at, we have debt rolling off in this budget cycle. I would recommend potentially keeping it flat and going out to referendum to do some of these other big capital projects that we have, like the roofs. We know the roofs, based on what Speasel put together, it was almost $10 million. So, there's things that we have to look at, and that we have to discuss during our strategic plan as well.
Okay, thank you. Those are all the questions I have.
Anybody have any other questions?
I have 2 more questions. I think these are probably quicker. Since last week, have we added any new, by the way, thank you. I do want to say thank you for all the due diligence. I do appreciate this. All the hard work and trying to maneuver things around, but have we added any new after school, summer school, or tutoring programs to what we see today compared to last week?
Yeah, it's nothing new from what we've been doing.
Okay, nothing new. Okay.
Status quo.
And then second question is, what are the requirements of publishing this online, and will we get a 1-pager for the public? Because this is a lot to digest.
What happens is this now goes to the county office.
Mhm.
We do a user-friendly budget. Once the county office approves it, that user-friendly budget will go on our website. It will be published in the paper, and it must be done, I think it's up to 4 days prior to our public hearing, so that people understand. So as we go through reiterations of all of this, the final budget, before the final budget is approved by the board, is when we put out the user-friendly budget.
Yeah, and just.
Which will have charts and stuff.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
We're gonna have
okay.
a budget presentation that
Yeah.
day. Absolutely.
Yeah,
On
just
the
to
26th.
just to your point, I do know that from other budgets, it's how to nestle it down so it's easy to read and understand, right? I think one of the things that might, right, yeah, nestle it down, right, nestle it down. I think one of the things that myself, Jim, and Tina did is we kind of worked on making this preliminary budget exercise, adding some screens to make sure people understood what we were forfeiting, what we were gaining, how people were moving around, was to also make it as user-friendly as we can. So we'll take some time to make sure we do that.
Yeah, the next step is the approval from the county on this, and that's, they have to look it over and make sure that we
Right.
met the requirements.
And I'm sorry, a follow-up to that is on one of the pages where it says like personnel, who's being transferred.
Yeah.
There were some assignments of schools, but not for all. Why do we only show like TOIS is getting this, or, why wouldn't we be in full disclosure and tell everybody what
Well,
buildings?
once again, there's going to be some movement that's still being worked out. And the ultimate, while you might have a retirement here, where the ultimate loss may be could be a school yet to be determined. So in some of them, we have it because we know exactly where it's going to be. But in some other cases, we know where a resignation was or something like that, but that might not be where the ultimate reduction is made in that school. The reduction may come at a different school where someone's being transferred out of. So until we have all that, and that will come to the public, in transfers or what have you, by our May 10th meeting or probably at our May 10th meeting, because that's when we would do all of our personnel rehires and transfers and all that.
Okay. Yeah, so again, so I want to thank everybody for the work you all did and just kind of walking us through all this. And I know it was a lot of work by everybody. I do want to say that this is preliminary, and there's also, things that we're going to be applying for that may have an impact for us on the summertime, right? From what's that? What's that
Well,
phrase?
hopefully there'll be some stabilization
Some
aid
stabilization,
that
right.
will become available. And if that's the case, then, but the question will be how to utilize that. And,
Right.
But
we're not sure
Could be.
of the timing of that, and we can't really plan for it, right? So we want to know the amount, the timing. So this is kind of the plan we have to have preliminarily kind of sent to the.
we can't
to
count
the
on
county,
that.
Right, we can't count on that. So, these are obviously tougher times than we actually would all hope. I think that being on the board for a couple of years prior, we can kind of see all this kind of coming, right? So it's, and now that this time is here, it's a little, disappointing because it's obviously investments we want to make.
Mhm.
Kids have been out of school for a couple of years. We don't really have big investments kind of going forward. Right? We're actually staying more of the status quo and doing the things we have to do to kind of keep us running as efficiently, as effectively as possible, right? So, so to everybody that's in the community that's possibly listening, I know that the district is doing the best that they can, the administration is doing the best they can to do what we can with what we have. And I, on the edges, there's always things like, can we do this instead of this? Can we do this instead of this? But the macro part to this is really about the things I think Dr. Svanquist outlined about class sizes, those kind of things, teachers moving and all that kind of stuff. And us not being able to make as much infrastructure investments as we want to have to help, keep us advanced. So I appreciate everybody kind of in this discussion and talking through this. And I do appreciate all the questions and everything. Does anybody else have anything they do want to say before we?
We have to go to 6.1. We didn't discuss 6.1.
6.1 is the school security grant. It's called the Alyssa's Law. We did it back in 2020. We did not get the grant in on time to be in the first round of the funding. So the state over the past month has been working with the county office, and what they did was they created a security discretionary grant for the people that did not get the funding, or the school districts that did not get the funding in 2021, like we should have. And all this is a reapplication of that exact grant back in 2020. So their advice was to redo the board resolution and put the grant, the same grant request in for 2022.
Thank you.
Okay, great.
Oh, Alex.
Does that grant request include increased security to the buildings and the entranceways?
No, that was for, what was it for? This switch, wireless access so that there wasn't drops, things like that. It was $189,000. So whatever they requested, we've already done a lot of the work. Whatever they requested in 2020 is what we're
Exact
trying to
same.
get reimbursed for, correct?
Okay, anybody else on this? John, you'll tell you have a question, no? No, you good? Okay. Okay,
So we're voting on 6.1.
I think-
6.1 and
I
6.2,
think we're voting on
correct?
6.1, 6.2.
Because we have to load the resolution in with the grant application.
So Amy, what happened? You got a second?
And we got
Yeah, second
Take
was
a
Ms.
roll.
Prolanis.
So I guess we can,
Yep.
we can take roll for the.
Okay,
to vote on
terrific.
this.
Thank you. Mrs. Beal?
6.1, yes, 6.2, recuse myself for professional reasons.
Okay, Ms. Gilman?
Yes.
Ms. Hayes?
6.1, yes, 6.2, without the proper use, in my opinion, of ARP funds and ESSER funds. I'm gonna vote no for 6.2.
Okay, Mr. McGovern?
Yes,
I'm sorry, I said Miss.
That's all right.
I meant
I know.
Miss. I'm
I'm
sorry.
not worried about it.
I want to know why? I completely skipped.
I
over
know.
John. Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Ms. Prolamis?
I can't believe I'm voting yes for a 2% budget. I don't think I've ever voted yes for a 2% budget, but I vote
Shocking,
yes,
Church.
and I appreciate all the work that the administration has done on the budget.
Thank you. Ms. Talerico?
Yes.
Ms. Tortorella is absent. Mr. Weinstein?
Yes.
Terrific. Motion
Okay.
carries.
Thank you, Mr. Truba, and thank you, Jim. Old business, anybody have anything they want to bring up on old business? Oh, so,
Superintendent interviews are this week, or assistant superintendent, sorry, for special education.
It's coming, Alex. Don't worry. It's coming soon. It's coming.
Can we get a status update, and are there any minority applicants that are being interviewed?
I'm not sure if I think it's
I
personnel.
think this is personnel.
But I will say the process has begun. I could speak to the process. The process has begun.
Thank you.
And with first round and we're moving on to second rounds this week.
Thank you.
Anything else for old business? No? Okay. Anything for new business? John?
I have two items for new business. One to respond to what Mrs. Gilman had said. I think that the district should consider a Kenny Pickett Day. I'm not looking to get involved in the administration's business, but that would be a great organic way to do some PR for the district. And I'm sure he's extremely busy right now, I would assume. However, when the time avails, I think that would be a great way to do some organic PR for the district. I'm just throwing that comment out there.
I spoke to Dr. Stankiewicz about maybe 6 weeks ago, kind of talking about this. And he's starting to talk to.
Yeah, sorry, it's my idea. I'm taking the. Yeah.
And he's already.
Yeah, I mean, you know, our coaches are still in almost daily contact with Mr. Pickett, and you know, obviously if he's a first round draft pick as he's projected to be, that's an outstanding accomplishment and speaks to the quality of our programs. And when and if we are able to get him back here to do something, I'm sure we would absolutely take advantage of that. Just as we did Michael Ruslan, who created all and produced all the Batman movies the other day, who was at the high school.
Awesome. This doesn't just have to be for sports. So,
Absolutely.
number two,
Yeah.
I think that, and I'm open to any opinions. I'm sorry for opening this can of worms, but I think that just this year, looking at this, right, you talk about the loss of a ability to upgrade preschool playgrounds, and you talk about the loss of an ability to provide a preschool supervisor. That kind of stings a little bit, right, for me. I can only imagine what that's going to feel like for the mothers and the fathers of this district. And I assume that many of them are not listening to what is going on here. And I would assume that stinging is going to be redirected towards our administration and this board unnecessarily. And understandably so, because people are angry at those things. And I assume that looking at what we're going to lose another $500,000, that it's going to get even worse, right? And I think that two things need to happen. I think that one, we need to get out in front of this and communicate it. And Dr. Spangus, I'm sorry for saying that because you are communicating as much as you can, but I think we need to do it even more regarding this and what is happening. And I think that this board needs to say something to all of our representation in Trenton about what is happening to the S2 districts, especially since one of those individuals sits on the education committee. And I'm not looking to call anyone out specifically, but we have a 20% loss of learning due to the pandemic. And that number triples in our lower socioeconomic groups when we start to look at them specifically. It almost triples. And so we cannot be losing funding to our budget. It cannot happen. And the citizens of this town need to be aware of it, and they need to know who they need to call. And we need to communicate to them that they need to get in touch with all our representation possible to lobby them to represent us where they can. I think it's extremely important. I don't know, I'm open to the board on how we do this, but I think it needs to happen. And I'm assuming that people are already aware, but I think it needs to be communicated that we need to overemphasize this need.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with you at all. And our state senator is aware about our challenges, as well as he represents many within his own district of S2 school districts like us who are suffering quite a bit from this. So, and in our meeting, he gave us some comparisons of other districts who are even more deeply suffering, right? So he's aware of that. And Jim and I did talk to our state assembly office. So I think your idea of how to mobilize the community is one that we should possibly think through on how to make sure the voice is heard maybe a little louder. And I'm not sure the way to go about that, but we should definitely think through if as a board, we
Can I-
agree
can
that
I-
that's a path. in
Can I,
the- Yeah.
can I jump in for a second?
Well, chance me, but are we going to go to trend? I think they're trying to organize something and we haven't heard yet of what the actual organization is about taking a ride down the trend.
Yeah, just, John, we've done some of that in the past. I've sent letters home a few years back. I mean, it's been a few years
Yeah.
pre-pandemic. To encourage people to, with the numbers of all the representatives and contact, we're losing funds, that unfortunately didn't result in us not losing funds. Obviously, the pandemic kind of changed that, but I do think, getting back to that in some fashion would be a good thing.
I'm happy to hear that.
Can I just say one thing?
Sure.
One suggestion. Just to John's point, when we did the referendum, we did do a school by school meeting type of a thing. We could talk about maybe sending, or going, I know we go to PTA meetings, but a lot of times PTA meetings, maybe one parent goes to that, but then maybe a different parent would want to come to a different, a budgetary type meeting. I know that, John, I'm going to burst your bubble to tell you, and we have Zoom, so it'll be better, but unfortunately, I've sat here for 9 years and been very disappointed that the most amount of people we've had on budget presentation night has maybe been 4, that has not been, besides who's sitting here or the administration that's there. You come, so you're within the 4 that usually comes, but and we've tried to get people here, but doing things where it's a meeting outside of a Tuesday night, that it's maybe like, when we did the referendum meetings, I mean, people came to those, but that was something
Yeah, I
exciting to
mean,
get, but
Right, and
that
it
was
wasn't, it's not like we had hundreds.
And
Right.
just to
But still more.
and just put a finer point on it. The meetings that we have here now are not as well attended, right? And when we have our strategic planning sessions, those are incredibly well attended. So we definitely have a challenge. I'm not saying it's not a hill that we shouldn't try to figure out how to climb, right? So we should separate out the two things, right? And we should also probably make sure we tone down that past performance is indicative of future performance, right? We should probably tone that down and figure out how we want to go about doing it. So it's a process. And it's probably not a splash in the pan where one event kind of does it. It's probably something we have to figure out, how to actually strategically figure out how to do it, and also evaluate what the impact's going to be if we are able to mobilize people, right? So we should figure out how to discuss that and figure out how to have an open discussion about what a plan might be.
So I can assume that this will be on the agenda for a future meeting?
I
Mr. President?
I definitely would guarantee that. It will
Okay,
be on the agenda.
Thank you.
Probably before the 26th, when we have to submit our, approve the final budget. Also, just a note on another side, we were gonna have a resolution to basically have something that goes out to state our position to the state. Tina and Jim did not find a resolution yet that anybody else has put out. And so we're gonna still be looking for that, and we'll at least make sure we have it on or before when we have our final budget for approval to give to the state. Okay,
Are we waiting for somebody to put some language out before we do it?
Well, we thought
Why can't we
the
do it?
initial thing was that we thought
Oh.
somebody else would have done it first.
Mhm.
And then we would kind of piggyback off of that. Now that, since we haven't found that, we need to figure
Well,
out. how to
well,
go
yeah,
about that.
part of it, I'm sorry if I can jump
Sure,
in.
go ahead.
No, we reached out to the county to see, are other districts doing this? Is there, because obviously strength in numbers if this is happening. And I think they communicated to us that no one had done that. So that was kind of what, if not so much, I mean, maybe a little bit to steal some of the language, but part of it was to see, what other districts might be doing something like this. Finding out that there aren't any, then maybe we'll be the one to start it and
Sure.
go from there. So I think that was, just waiting to see.
Let's lead the ST charge here.
Exactly, yes.
Okay, John, you had two questions for new business, so we.
Both
did all
were-
those?
both were
Okay.
addressed.
Anybody else have anything for new business?
You were.
Denise, you have something?
No,
John?
I'm good.
Okay. Nobody else? Okay. Let's go to public comment, I guess, right?
Mhm.
Okay. So anybody from the public like to make a comment on any item at this time? Thanks, and if you could just state your name and address, that'd be great.
Paul Marowitz, 14 Magnolia Court, Ocean, New Jersey. I apologize for taking your time up. I realize there's an episode of This Is Us on TV plus a soccer game, so my apologies. 2 meetings ago, I talked about enrollment. Probably was the only non-board member in the public that read the statistics. The chart that was presented had an error in it and understated the number of students that were in the high school. I've taken a look at the work that statistical forecasting has done. At that meeting, Tina indicated that they were going to redo the forecast. They're going to appear here April 12th. I think they really need to answer some hard questions. The report that they presented basically said for 18 years we had declining enrollments. Yet their forecast had increasing enrollments. Didn't make any sense. They provided an explanation as to why there was an overestimation of the enrollment statistics, and they blamed it on Oakhurst Country Day Estates and Paramount Realty not completing their building. Nowhere in that report did it really address the elephant that Ocean Township is facing. And that is, we're losing housing stock. We have people buying vacation homes. No children. They're not going to the public schools. We have people buying homes full-time. And they're sending kids to non-public schools, the charter schools, 15 of them, as I recall the number, plus the Hillel School. All of this impacts public school enrollment. And they missed it completely. There's no excuse for it. And I would hope that when they're here on April 12th, they would consider that in their enrollment forecast, because that's going to impact class size and is going to impact all the hard work that the staff has done and this board has done in trying to make sure we allocate our teachers in the most efficient manner possible. This is a quote from Dr. Grip, which he made in 2016. Districts which are at the upper end of the socioeconomic spectrum are difficult for younger people in their 20s and 30s to move into due to high-priced homes and taxes. I think we qualify. Subsequently, they are older communities with a sharply declining birth rate. All Well, many of these districts can offset some of the decline due to families moving in from other communities with school-age children. It's not been enough to stem enrollment losses. I just don't understand his projections. I don't understand his margin of error that he quotes as 1% a year. Simply because projections of educational statistics, which is done by the Department of Education, talks about margin error of 0.3, 0.6, and 1.3 for 1, 3, and 5 years. The numbers that he's talking about for margin of error were based upon districts of 50,000 people, I believe, and only 2 of which were less than 20,000 students. We don't even come close. So I don't understand how he calculates margin of error. He's an acknowledged expert on multivariate analysis. But you got to look at the base assumptions that he's utilizing so that we really understand what the enrollment forecast is. And Tina, I hope you pass that on to him, because if he doesn't answer those questions, we need a different company to do our forecasting. At the next meeting, can we get a report on whether or not the Veterans History Project makes sense or not? And just as a sidebar, John and Jeff, can I speak to you after the meeting only because I have an idea on this idea of publicity and selling it? Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. Thanks for your comments. Anybody else here would like to make a comment? No. Anybody on the line, Ms. Conway, that would like to make a comment?
Yes, President Weinstein, Keith Chapman,
Okay,
please go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Keith Chapman on West Park Ave in Ocean here. I've lived here for about 10 years, and my wife's family has lived here for a couple generations. They've been to schools here before the high school was even thought of. And so far, what I've heard, and one reason why I put my kids here and why I wanted to live here is because of the school system. And we've gotten some great things out of it. We've gotten some great things out of the elementary schools with helping my son and with helping my daughter. But the one thing I listen to here and I hear tonight is that you guys want a 2% raise, but we're not really getting anything more. We're just maintaining the status quo. I don't know the Board of Ed member that mentioned this, and I'm sorry, but you talk about going to the state. We need to go to the state. You're cutting money. You're getting money cut. But I don't hear anything new. I don't hear anything for next year going, we're going to be doing this new because we need to get more students here. We're going to be doing that new because we need to attract more students, or we got to attract more programs. We're getting this money to do this. I don't see that. I hear maintaining the status quo, but you want to raise for 2%. And I think you got to do better. I think you got to reach out more to the state. Then we got to figure out how to get more money. All I heard here the last couple of years is we're going down, we're decreasing this, we're decreasing that. Okay, stop for the excuses. Let's find the money, but without going to the taxpayer base, because our taxes are too high here. And that's maybe why we're starting to lose students. Who knows? But find the money, go to the state. And I'm sure some people have, but is it enough? Schools have an excellent program. I think we have excellent resources, but I don't hear anything new. And yeah, we've lost 2 years, at least. Special ed kids have lost a lot more. I have a child who's special needs. He's lost a lot more than just 2 years. So I really think we do need to reach out further. And I do definitely agree with the Board of Ed member. We need to push harder to find more money. And we should go back and say, okay, this is what's new. Because you guys want a 2% raise. You run a business, you keep on falling and falling and falling, your business is closing. So, thank you.
Okay, thanks for your comments. Ms. Conway, anybody else would like to make a comment?
No, President Weinstein, there are no more commenters.
Okay. All right, with that, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay. Motion. Meeting's over. Thank you.